Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Daniela for those of you who are new here, and I actually have some things I want to talk about. A little bit of an update, if you will. Even if you won't, it's still an update. If you watched my video that I uploaded, I don't even know how many months ago, but I told you guys how my boyfriend, friend, and I opened a business. So we bought into this franchise and we have a whole brick and mortar store in the city, and SelfieWRLD Boston is moving. And I'm here to tell you why we're moving. So if you're interested, that was a very long intro, but if you're interested in learning about that, then just stay tuned. Okay guys, so I'm just gonna let you know right now, this is gonna be a pretty long video, so grab a snack because we're just gonna go into a lot right now. I feel like I should have like a storybook in front of me. Quick little it's not quick. A little backstory. When we first started SelfieWRLD, when we were first talking about starting SelfieWRLD, this was back in February of 2021. And we were looking into places to lease, and we found this one place in Somerville. So it's part of this complex. It's very up and coming. It's grown a lot over the past few years, and it's kind of been a really fun attraction. At least personally, I like to go there. So we looked into a space there. We looked into a few spaces actually. And one of the spaces we looked into was actually a family friend's store. And she's kind of like my aunt's best friend. We're gonna call her Jennifer, okay? So she owns a dress store, and she has a store right on the main street. And the agent we were working with was like, okay, this store is occupied right now, but she's gonna be out relatively soon. So we're like, okay. I didn't think anything of it because I thought, you know, this is private matters. She probably has a lease ending. She probably has her plans and everything. So we go in, we look at the store, we're like, not really for us. But what I want you guys to get from this little story is that they showed us the space while she was in there. He didn't go in there at all. He just told us to go in, look around, look at the space. Yeah, and then, so we ended up actually picking a much bigger space. And when we signed the license agreement, so we did not sign a lease. A license agreement is just for shorter term. It was for a year. And I'm just gonna explain to you guys why we did a 1-year license agreement. So we were new into this business, and we also weren't too aware of what our sales were going to be. So we obviously had our own projections, like we had our own business plan, we had financials that we estimated, but obviously you can estimate all you want, but you just don't know how things are going to go. If you're going to be as busy, like if you don't know what sales are going to be on slower months, you don't know how sales are going to be on busier months. Like we just didn't want to lock ourselves in to something that we didn't know we would be able to afford. And what I mean by that is, if we were to go for a longer term lease, like 3 years, 5 years, which is usually what they look for, we would have had to pay market rent, which in Boston, or at least in Somerville, which is right on the outskirts of Boston, is well over $20,000, okay? That's something I want you guys to kind of just understand. So for a longer term lease, you will be paying a lot more money monthly. And like I said, we didn't know how much we were going to be making in sales. We didn't know what our expenses were going to be because we were very new to this. Yes, we did have, you know, like we talked to a few of other franchise owners, but they were from different states. Their expenses were completely different than ours because we're in Boston. We are faster pace, more expensive city. Like it was very different. So there's only so much we could really take from the other selfie worlds that were already existing. So we decided that we were going to do a 1-year license agreement with the option to renew. And we felt pretty safe because that specific spot that we ended up leasing was empty for years. Like, there used to be a store there, it didn't last long, and that space was just being used for storage. So we were like, okay, well, it doesn't seem like there's much interest in this space at all, so I think we'll be okay for another year. So that's kind of what we were really banking on, that no one else would really want this space. And sorry guys, I have very loud neighbors. And then we were also banking on the fact that our space was gonna look pretty unattractive because of the walls that we were gonna build up. You know, if someone comes in and they see these walls, they were probably gonna be like, I don't wanna pay to take them down. So we thought that that would deter people from looking into our space. So yeah, that's pretty much the backstory. We got a 1-year license agreement and our rent was affordable. Like, it was extremely affordable. So we thought this was great. You know, we did our thing. Fast forward to September. We were just about to open. We were probably doing like the finishing touches of the space, and we walked by. I'm sorry if you guys, I'm just gonna pause really quick. If you guys hear the neighbors, I apologize. They're just very, very loud. Fast forward to September, we're adding the finishing touches to the store, so we're really, really close to opening date, and I get a call. The call is from my aunt, and she's explaining to me that there's an issue with Jennifer's store, Jennifer, the family friend with the dress store, and she was getting kicked out. And I was shocked. I was under the impression that she already had her plans, because if you guys remember, earlier that year, our agent showed us her store as an option if we wanted it. So I was surprised to see them surprised that she was leaving. And long story short, I guess she had a lease or some agreement of the sort, and they kind of just kicked her out. Obviously, there was more to it. There was probably some fine print, but essentially she was getting kicked out. And that got me a little nervous because I did have a conversation with her and her daughter, and they both assured me that she did have a lease and that they just kind of came in and evicted her. So that got me a little nervous, and I came back to the guys and I'm like, hey guys, so mind you, this is September. I was like, hey guys, we should start a conversation with our landlord to make sure that we can renew our lease, because it was September, our lease ended in March 31st. And I just didn't want to end up in the same situation. We ended up emailing them, telling them, hey, we were looking to start a conversation to renew our lease because, you know, we were so close to opening and we just didn't want, you know, any issues. And they came back to us and told us it was too early, which I understand. It was September, our lease ended, you know, March 31st. All right, but we did have it on our radar. We knew we wanted to renew. They knew we wanted to renew. That was just kind of like end of story. Fast forward again to December. We were like, okay, a few months have gone by. I feel like, you know, we all collectively thought it was a good time to bring up the conversation again, and we did. And our contact was actually very open to it. He asked us what we were interested in, and we told him that we were looking into a longer term lease. Obviously, we had our budget in mind, and, you know, we were just throwing around different ideas of how we can make this deal happen. And what we ended with was, he said he was going to talk to his team and he will get back to us. So we felt good about that. Everything was great. We're like, okay, let's wait to see what his team says and then we'll figure everything out. weeks go by and we kind of, not brush it off, but we kind of feel a little bit understanding because it's the holiday season. We did, however, send follow-up emails once a week saying, hey, if there's an update, can you please let us know? But we, like I said, we were very understanding because it was holiday season, and you know, it can get kind of hard to do business around the holidays, or at least I thought so. Yeah, so we hadn't heard from him for a couple weeks, and at this point it was after the holidays. It was like first week of January. We were actually at the store doing some maintenance, and we just decided, okay, let's actually go to the office because something just isn't sitting right. They've been kind of ignoring our emails, and there's a lot of people on this email chain and no one is responding. So we were feeling a little uneasy. So Jerome and Emil both go to the office and they speak to our contact's boss, and they basically told him, hey, we're in contact with this person and he hasn't responded to us. We're looking to renew our lease. Can you like let us know, or talk to him, let us know what's going on? And it was a little weird. He ended up telling the guys that our contact no longer works there, and said to not be alarmed. There is a store that's looking into our space, but it's most likely going to fall through. And he said it was a candy store. The guys came, relayed that information onto me, and I remember it like it was yesterday because Emil told me, he was like, okay, don't be alarmed, but there is a space, or there is a company looking into our space. It's a candy store, but don't be alarmed. And I literally, like, alarms were going off in my head. I was like, no, I am alarmed. I am 100% alarmed. Why would there be a candy store looking into our space? Especially because there was a candy store next door years back and it failed. So I was like, candy stores aren't a thing anymore. Like, you know, buy the candy by the pound, like that's not really popular anymore. It was a thing a few years back, but no one does that anymore. So I was like, and why would a candy store want a huge space like ours? Like we have about 6,000 square feet of space. So I was like, I don't like, it's just, you know, it just, the math ain't math, and it just wasn't making any sense. So the guys understood where I was coming from, and we sent a follow-up email to our contact, who apparently didn't work there anymore. No, I lied. So we actually sent another email to another contact, and she CC'd our original contact, the one who apparently didn't work there anymore. And we were so confused. And he emails back and he says, call me. And immediately I get a very, very, very bad feeling. I really wish, now thinking back, that I recorded that conversation. But I guess that probably wouldn't have been a good idea, because I don't even, for legal reasons. But I really wish I was able to record that conversation so you can see our reaction, because, so I'm getting ahead of myself. So pretty much we call him. All three of us are present. You know, we were very happy with our bubble tea, and we call this contact and he goes, we are working on a deal with this other company and it's most likely going to go through. And you can imagine how confused, how upset, how mad we were. It was just a huge flood of emotions right then and there, all in 1 second when he said that. Because not only were we told by his boss that he no longer works there, but to not be alarmed because a candy store was looking into our space, but the deal most likely won't go through. Now to find out that it was a completely different company that was looking into our space. Not only a completely different company, but it was a company that already had a store in the complex. Like, they were literally just making a move across the street into our space. and the deal will most likely go through. So that was just appalling to us because he was ignoring our emails. So he clearly saw the emails. Although he said, oh, I've been very busy and the holidays and X, Y, and Z, but obviously that was all a lie, because if you had the time to go through with this deal, you clearly had the time to read over our emails and let us know up front that this was happening. We felt like it was very shady and very unprofessional of them, to say the least, because they knew we were looking to renew, and they kind of, now, like, obviously business is business. We couldn't afford the same amount that this other company was going to be paying. So I understand why they did what they did, but at the same time, I really do wish that they told us a month before. You know what I mean? Like, if a month is a lot of time for us to start planning what we're doing and, start looking for another space. And, a month is a lot of time. And he was just sitting on that month without telling us anything. The whole team was just not telling us anything. His boss was misleading us, thinking that nothing is happening. And it was just a very, very, very frustrating time for us, because at that point we felt like there's really nothing we can do. And we continued this conversation for weeks, really going nowhere, because we were obviously expressing our concerns and our feelings on how unprofessional and how they weren't being transparent with us, because they weren't responding back to our emails. We tried to see if there was a way we can work out a deal to stay in our space for a lot longer. That took weeks. They ended up giving us an extra month to stay in the space. So instead of, being out of there by March 31st. Oh, that's another thing, actually, before I even get ahead of. So our lease was supposed to end March 31st. And after that, he said, your lease ends March 31st, but we're able to take you on as a month-to-month tenant up until this deal closes. So we asked him, we're like, okay, well, not ideal, but when does this deal close? Because we obviously want to understand the timeline, so we understand how much time we have and how to organize ourselves correctly. And he was just being terrible. Oh my goodness, he couldn't give us anything. And having been on the other side of working out a deal with a lease or a license agreement, when your lease is supposed to start, when you're starting the agreement. Like when you're starting in the works, they tell you up front when your lease is able to start. So the fact that he just kept saying, oh, I don't have that information, was very frustrating, because he knew the timeline, but he just didn't want to give us that information, which, there could be reasons on the back end to why he couldn't give that information, but I'm just speaking from, our point of view and our perspective and how we felt at the time. So all we really knew was that our lease ended March 31st, and we were on a month-to-month basis with 30-day notice, which we had 6-month notice on our previous agreement, but now it's 30-day notice that could come any day. So you can only imagine how we felt. It was a rough couple weeks after that, because we were looking for new spots like crazy, in Boston, out of Boston. We started conversations with so many people, all while continuing conversations with our contact, who also, by the way, on that phone call said that this other company was going to be moving into our space. We couldn't take over their current space because another company was moving into their space, but there was one other space opening up and we can just move there. And the way he said it, and I really wish that I recorded this, but the way he said it was just like, oh yeah, it's fine, we have a space opening up, you guys could just like, you know, like pick up your stuff and like move there. So he said it in a way that was like, you can just pack everything up and move it, which was very, very frustrating, because obviously if you've been there or if you've seen any videos, any pictures of the space, we have like permanent walls that we built, you know, like there's a bunch of different booths that we can't just pick up and move. So essentially what he was expressing to be such a simple task was like, for us, was actually like restart construction, go through all of that all over again in the new space. So you can imagine how we felt at the time, because he's over here, you know, like saying it's like, you know, we do this type of stuff all the time. Shady. But it like, he made it seem like it was no big deal, when obviously for us it was like, now we needed to figure out a way to kind of start this all over again, having only been open for like 5 months. Now we were, like I said, scrambling, looking for other places in and out of Boston that'll hopefully take us in. We weren't being very picky with the size. We just knew that there was like a certain size requirement that we needed to go by, and wherever we looked, whatever conversation we started was just not leading us anywhere. A lot of places didn't want to do a short-term lease, or they were just charging way too much rent. So although we already knew what our sales numbers looked like, the rent that we were going to be charged was insane. And it wouldn't have been feasible for us to sign ourselves into a long-term lease over something we didn't really know if we could afford. So we were in a bit of a pickle for a few months. It was a lot of back and forth, a lot of conversations that led nowhere. And ultimately, we were down, I'm not gonna go into the nitty-gritty details, but ultimately we were down to 2 spots, and that was Burlington, which is about 25 minutes out of the city, and that spot in that complex that our contact mentioned. And mind you, we had this conversation with even the franchise owner, and even she was advising us to not make any further deals with them, because obviously they're very shady, they're not transparent. As much as they like to say they are, as much as, you know, they like to say that they're trying to help us out, like, they just do a lot of shady business, and at the end of the day, you know, it's all about the numbers for them. But when you really have no other options, there's nothing you can really do. So we kind of just made our own little pros and cons list of these 2 locations. And I had a lot of reserves over the Burlington location, only because it was around 25 minutes out of the city. We knew that a lot of our clientele, a lot of our customers actually came from far away to come see us where we originally were. But I just wasn't sure if that would continue if we moved all the way to Burlington. And something about, you know, like, yes, we are SelfieWRLD Boston, and we were located in Somerville, but Somerville, like, literally, you can see Boston from where we were located. It was still on the Orange Line, which is, you know, one of the trains that runs through Boston. So although Somerville isn't right in the heart of Boston, we were very, very close to it. But Burlington, that It's not, you know, train accessible. It's not, it was just really far out, and I was just very concerned about moving our business all the way out there. Even though the location was great and it would have meant a whole new demographic, I was just a little nervous. But at the end of the day, as you may know, we ended up picking the spot at the same complex. They offered us an okay deal that we feel like we can kind of try and stay ahead of, something that we can work out and, you know, figure out along the way. We're obviously gonna be on our toes the whole time, sleeping with one eye open, but we felt like it was just a better decision, a better choice to stay close. And yeah, that's where we are.
I wouldn't say we're done with Burlington yet, just because my still needs to go back and get approval on this.
So basically, we're back at what he was saying before, where he'll just tell us something, but there's really no guarantee that we're gonna get everything that he's offering.
So I mean, I don't think he would, at least with this case. I don't know if he
I don't know, because he also said, oh, I'll deal with my team later, you guys, like, the walls can stay up, I'll deal with it. And then all of a sudden it's, no, now you guys are in charge of the walls. So now I don't really trust anything he says.
Right.
So well, I don't want to read all this, because it sounds good. You know, all these terms sound good, but I also don't trust him at all. So
the conversation I had with him last time, most of these terms have been approved.
Most of them? So
yeah.
What is it, the rent?
Yes, this new thing, 2 months free or whatever the hell it is.
That's what he needs to get approved.
That's what he needs to get approved for. Okay. But last Friday, yeah, go ahead, Jerome.
What I was getting at with Burlington, I meant in terms of us, you know, trying to still push the envelope and renegotiate for better terms.
I would say depends how responds.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can respond to this email, and then if he comes back and says, hey, actually the team said this and that, then we can say, okay, like, do we want to go back to Burlington and start that conversation?
But my only thing is, like, I feel like we also still need to keep in consideration the cost of a long-term rent for Burlington, because right now we're you know, balancing these, both of their, like, short-term lease terms, because we can afford both those rents. But we also, because our plan is to, you know, do the short-term lease up until we can figure it out, and then, you know, sign for a long-term lease. But if giving us a better deal long term, you know what I mean? Because, like, yeah, like, these, like, we want to keep renegotiating terms, but regardless of what Burlington says about, like, right now the short-term lease, at the end of the day, if they can't give us a better rent price for long-term, then there's really no reason to be considering. That's just my opinion.
I didn't even want to sit in the first place.
Huh?
So which they're probably not going to give us a better deal for a long
Exactly.
term.
Like, they said it themselves. They think that they can get more money with someone else, which is completely understandable, but you know what I mean? Like, because I also don't want to put us in that position, because...
Well, that's my hesitation with Burlington.
Yeah.
It's that. And then I don't know if you guys even seen the other part, but they want like 10-15% of sales on top of
and that's another issue.
After 500K, they want, so anything over 500K, they want 10-15% of those sales on top of what they're giving us. Yeah. Which I think is absurd for Burlington. Not
to mention that we were keeping all of this information from our employees, and believe me, we weren't proud of it. They would ask us, sorry, that's the mic. They would ask us all the time why tickets were blocked off at a certain point, and we didn't know what to tell them. And the reason, if any of our employees are watching this video, the reason why we didn't say anything was because we wanted to kind of give you guys a plan. We didn't want to break down this news and you know, for someone to ask, okay, what's next? And we just shrug. Because that's literally where we were up until a week before we told them. For months, from literally the first week of January up until the last week of March, we had no idea what we were doing. No idea what we were gonna do. We were still trying to figure things out, and it was really frustrating, but we just didn't want to tell our employees, listen, you know, we have to be out of here, without giving them our next steps. Because at the end of the day, this is their jobs, you know, and we just didn't really want to do that to them. It was weighing on us, just withholding this information from them. And obviously we apologize, you know, but we wanted them to know that there's, you know, a plan after. And so finally, when we told them, you know, we let them know it was in lighter spirits that we're moving to another location and that it's up the street. Unfortunately, because of how long it took us to finally figure out this deal, figure out where we were moving to, we are kind of backtracked in the timeline, so we can't just smoothly transition over to the new spot because obviously construction hasn't even started yet. And that's a whole other situation, I guess. So if you did watch the first video I made when we first started Selfie World, we had agreed to start Selfie World back in February, signed the lease in March, and didn't open until September. So we just signed the lease. We have no idea when we're really opening. We believe that it's going to be a faster construction process because there's so much that we learned last year that we're obviously going to avoid this time around. But at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's all about how long it takes for permitting, because that was a huge headache that took us weeks and weeks. And that's kind of where we are right now. But the fun thing is that I will be redesigning all of the rooms all over again. And I feel like it'll be a fun time, I guess. I personally plan on keeping our followers on our social media page involved in the designing process. So I have a few ideas already, and I'm gonna actually post them on our story. Not all of them, because, you know, we want to leave it to the element of surprise. But certain details here and there, I'm definitely gonna need some help on, because I'm trying to have these rooms done in obviously a shorter amount of time and be prepared for a quicker opening than last year, where we had like months and months and months to prepare. But I feel like we definitely learned a lot the first time around, and we don't plan on making the same mistakes, but who knows. But yeah, that's pretty much everything in somewhat of a nutshell. It's a very extensive nutshell, but yeah. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, leave them down in the comments and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. That is all for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!